In the sci-fi epic Dune, the Fremen are descended from a long line of ancestors that link all the way back to planet Earth. They are mostly descended from the Middle East, North Africa, and Southwest Asia regions, of which predominantly practice the religion of Islam. We'll delve into the secret life and customs of the Fremen of Dune, which surprisingly mirrors the life of modern-day Muslims. Though Islam doesn't necessarily have a symbol to identify their faith, like, say, Christians who have a cross, what is normally associated with Muslims is the symbol of the moon, and this is probably linked to the importance of sighting the moon for the start of the holy month of Ramadan. This importance remains 20,000 years into the future in Dune. My Fremen call themselves Children of the Moon. So the moon, or in Dune's case, moons, are important to the Fremen, and this mirrors the importance of the moon in Islam. Muslims are in sync with the lunar calendar. For example, the time of fasting for the holy month of Ramadan begins when the new moon is sighted, and it ends whenever the new moon is sighted again, normally after a 30-day period, give or take a day. You might be surprised to learn that the Fremen also practice Ramadan on Dune. If you open your copy of the Dune book, at the back you'll find the Dune glossary, in most editions, and there you will find the word Ramadan. It defines Ramadan as the ancient religious period marked by fasting and prayer, traditionally the 9th month of the solar lunar calendar. During the Fremen migration from planet to planet, they carried this religious tradition with them. It was Ramadan and April on Bela Tagus. Bela Tagus was the third stopping place of the forced Fremen migration. In the definition of Ramadan, Frank Herbert goes on to say, Fremen mark the observance according to the 9th meridian crossing cycle of the first moon. So they use the first moon of Arrakis to begin fasting the month of Ramadan on Dune. That moon is notable for a distinct human fist pattern on its surface. The symbol of the fist is also symbolic of symbolisms of resistance in Earth's history. So the Fremen are linked to Islam more than we might think, because the Old Terra or Old Earth ancestors of the Fremen practice Ramadan too. Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, and the month in which the Quran was revealed to Prophet Muhammad, and fasting during the month is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Intermittent fasting has grown in popularity in recent years, with studies showing that there are many great benefits in abstaining from food and drink for a set period of time. The Fremen were all about conserving moisture. They manufacture incredible stillsuits that retain the body's water, and purify and recycle it for human consumption as a survival tactic to last in the extreme heat of the open bled, as the deserts of Arrakis are called. Bled coming from Arabic and used in North Africa to mean town or country, so the open bled means open country. Fasting has great health benefits for the body itself. Some research suggests that intermittent fasting may be more beneficial than other diets for reducing inflammation, for example. It has also been shown to improve biomarkers of disease, reduce oxidative stress, and preserve learning and memory functioning. Studies have also shown it improves blood pressure and resting heart rates, as well as other heart-related measurements. It also improves physical performance, showing signs of fat loss while maintaining muscle, and generally you gain better immune function, better heart function, and better gut function, increasing your resistance to stress. And these are all things that the Fremen would need to survive in the open desert. But there are also benefits of spiritual growth. Those who fast the Islamic way from sunrise until sunset, the same way the Fremen do, are encouraged to abstain from not only food and drink, but from other worldly pleasures and enjoyments, with an encouragement to focus on spiritual activities such as reading religious texts like the Quran, listening to its recitation, and prayer. The one observing a fast is encouraged not to argue or speak excessively in meaningless conversation, but should be in a state of reflection, and deep thought in a meditative sense. From the spiritual angle, Ramadan is about conquering the self, and the Fremen conquering the sandworms, particularly in the sand riding test, could be a parallel of this, because the Fremen are an incredibly disciplined people through practice. Fasting has been prescribed to all Muslims as a form of overcoming lusts and desires, learning to control oneself and not become a slave to their desires and appetites. In the context of Dune, abstaining from drinking water and adding it to the cisterns in order to transform Arrakis into a physical paradise would be an added dimension to the reasons the Fremen are happy to fast. It could teach them the discipline of abstaining from all the water in the collected cisterns. But were there any characters in Dune that actually fasted? There actually were. Stilgar and a character called Leto in the later books were shown to practice fasting. With Stilgar, Leto had a thought to suggest that they both break their fast. He realized that he was very hungry. They had eaten the previous noon, and Leto insisted on fasting. This is not just an act for the sake of abstaining from food. This is a spiritual decision. So what would a typical day in the life of a Fremen on Arrakis during Ramadan look like? Well, it would begin very early in the morning, with pre-dawn activities. Frank Herbert writes, as was the Fremen custom, some of the prominent characters in the later books arose an hour before dawn. This implies the pre-dawn meal, called the sahur, which is encouraged in Islam to be eaten before beginning a fast for the day. So the Fremen would eat their sahur meal and offer their morning prayers or Fajr prayers, which begins at dawn. They might also make an invocation called a dua for moisture. And like Muslims, their day would be scheduled based around the 5 daily prayers: Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. Frank Herbert writes about the prayer of the Salat. Salat among the Fremen meaning the same daily prayers offered by Muslims. The time of prayer for Muslims also changes throughout the year, based on sunrise and sunset. So there is this following the times and course determined by nature. This shows a harmony between humanity and the natural, in sync with the spiritual and the spatial. So being God-conscious throughout the day is a big part of Fremen life, as it is for Muslims. After those morning prayers, their day of work begins by collecting the morning dew, perhaps hunting for wild game to eat, scouting for spice blows, etc. Then, to avoid the hottest part of the day, they would retreat to a place of safety if possible, and perhaps rest for a morning siesta called the Zahar, which is found in the Dune books. It is good for her to take the Zahar, the morning siesta. The pale sun stood almost directly overhead. People of this quarter remain sealed in their houses to sleep through the hot part of the day. When it gets a little cooler, they'd continue scouting and patrolling, likely summoning a sandworm to get around. If they find a spice blow ready to harvest, they'll gather it. Then it would be time for Dhuhr prayers or Zuhr prayers, which occurs midday and would have to be offered in a place of shade or a hidden ch to avoid the sun and nasty Harkonnen troops that may be lurking around. And if they should come into confrontation with the Harkonnen, those will have to be dealt with. But if they are travelling on the back of a sandworm, they can perform their prayers while in motion, a pretty radical way to pray. In their spice gathering missions, they might come across spice smugglers or pirates and have to deal with those, and you might even bump into an old friend. Then in the afternoon, when the sun has passed the zenith, it would be time to pray the Asr prayer. It's really interesting thinking about how they uphold their prayers throughout the day too, because they have to perform ablutions, and relieving oneself in any way means that they have to perform their ablutions again. In terms of a still suit, because the suit is used to gather all bodily impurities such as sweat and urine, that would mean that they either have to remove the still suit before any given prayer, or simply not relieve themselves until they've performed each prayer at a safe location. Depending on their extenuating circumstances, a purification method of dust called tayammum might need to be used in order to pray their prayers despite having no access to water. Then as sunset approaches, if you're still out in the open bled, riding on the back of a sandworm, you'll try to reach a place of safety and security before sunset to break the fast with your Fremen friends, and offer the dusk or Maghrib prayers. Then the Fremen might break their fasts with dates and water collected from their stillsuits, or a spiced infused water with yucca flower called liban, which was originally a sour milk drink. They might even have baklawa too, which is found in the Dune books. This breaking of the fast is called the futur, not to be confused with the futars of the later books. I believe the Fremen would break their fast with something similar to the other foods they've been described as eating, like dates and water or milk. This is something that their Muslim ancestors used to do as well. The particular act of eating dates and milk for breaking the fast is described as a sunnah. This is found in various sunan, which are the collected sayings of the Prophet Muhammad and his companions. Frank Herbert mentions the sunan in the appendix at the back of the Dune book. One of these collected sayings would be called a hadith, again another word that Frank Herbert actually uses in the Dune story. Stilgar mentions our science of tradition, our hadith. In terms of the food they'd eat for breaking the fast, they could hear attendants in the antechamber preparing breakfast, a simple gruel with dates and nuts, blended in liquid, skimmed from partially fermented spice, and it is actually a secret recipe that has prophetic links. For the Maghrib prayers, again they would offer dua, which is an invocation, as it says in the Dune book, at dusk after the moisture prayers and evening meal, and there are similar invocations in the Islamic faith, which is likely where this idea comes from. And of course after the evening meal there would be coffee service. Then after the evening meal, they'll spend the night in prayer, particularly offering the last main prayer at night called Isha. It was not yet time for the nightly prayer of parting. We'll camp for the evening meal and prayer at Cave of Birds, beneath Habania Ridge. Then they would wake up just before dawn again, to begin another day of Ramadan on Dune. It's amazing to think that 20,000 years into the future, there are those among humanity who still choose to abstain from food and drink, fasting intermittently, more than likely with spiritual significance and motives, not due to a lack of food or drink. So this is a very powerful human quality that survives the test of time, and I think it's just as important as the development of the mentats with their mathematical computation. Without the use of thinking machines, and the practice of prana bindu, an ultimate mastery of the body's muscles and nerve training. Fasting is also a training and a discipline of the self, and it is a discipline that we can easily train in and practice today. Have you practiced intermittent fasting, and are you fasting during Ramadan? Drop a comment about your experience and training below. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and click the bell so that you can be first to be notified of new videos. Check out some of my other Dune content or some of my other popular culture videos here.